They called security on you, he said, with no trace of a question in it. In your own building. Technically, Marcus replied, they called security on someone they didn't recognize. Someone who didn't look like a person who could book room number 3. Yamamoto studied him again. You could have stopped it early, dropped the title, flashed credentials, thrown your weight around. I could have, Marcus said, but you didn't. No. Why? Marcus finally turned to him. His voice was soft but unyielding. Because I wanted them to show me who they are when they think no one important is watching. The elevator opened with a quiet ding on the top floor. A private meeting suite with a panoramic view of Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the tree line in early autumn gold. A polished mahogany conference table stood ready, flanked by 12 leather chairs. But only 2 would be used today. An assistant greeted them at the door, handed Marcus a leather portfolio, and disappeared without a word. Privacy was absolute. Marcus motioned toward the tea service set on the side table. I remember you prefer Earl Grey over coffee. Yamamoto smiled faintly. Still do. They sat. The tea was poured, and for a moment, 2 of the most powerful men in hospitality said nothing at all. Then Yamamoto leaned back. I've invested the last decade building my company on 3 principles: respect, transparency, and social responsibility. That's why I'm here. I know, Marcus said. But what I saw downstairs, Yamamoto continued, tells a different story. Not about you, about your organization, the people you trust to carry your name. I don't disagree. Yamamoto didn't press. He just waited. Marcus set his teacup down and opened the leather portfolio. Inside were several sheets of printed documentation. Guest Ethic Core reports, he said. Monthly compliance records, behavior flags, anonymous complaints submitted over the last 18 months, specific to the Meridian Club. He pushed the papers across the table. Yamamoto flipped through them, eyes narrowing slightly. 23 verified complaints tied to a single employee, Sarah Chen, and 3 internal escalations with no action taken. Until now, Marcus said. Yamamoto looked up. You let it build. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. I watched, I warned, I trained, and when that failed, I stopped warning. Yamamoto closed the folder. The story's gone viral. I know. Your stock dipped 3% in the last 90 minutes. I expected that. Your executive board is panicking. I'm meeting them after this. There was no fear in Marcus's voice. No hesitation, just fact. Yamamoto stirred his tea once. So, what are you going to do? Marcus tapped the folder again. I've already filed a Level 4 ethics flag in Guest Ethic Core. That automatically triggers a compliance freeze for all associated properties. Yamamoto raised an eyebrow. That includes your own? Yes, Marcus said. That includes Meridian Club. And that includes the holding company under my name. For the next 72 hours, $1.1 billion in ESG-aligned funds and partnerships will be paused. Yamamoto blinked. You flagged your own empire. I did. Why? Because you can't claim to value integrity only when it's convenient. The weight of that sentence sat between them for a long moment. Then Yamamoto leaned forward. And what comes next? Marcus picked up a second folder. 3 things. First, full internal review of all front-facing staff across our properties, starting with Meridian. Second, mandatory ethics and bias training. No exceptions, no delays. Third, we formalize a new operating charter, Guest Equity Accord, and every leadership level employee must sign it. And if they don't, they're out. Yamamoto gave a quiet, almost admiring laugh. You're building a new standard. I'm correcting an old one. Another pause. The city skyline glittered behind them. Down below, press vans were beginning to cluster outside the club. Yamamoto stood and walked toward the window. You do realize, he said slowly, that today could tank the merger. Marcus stood too. I also realize that what happened downstairs is exactly why we need the merger. Yamamoto turned. This is no longer just business, is it? Marcus shook his head. It's never just business when people's dignity is involved. The door clicked. Jennifer Brooks stood there, pale, breathless, holding a folder of her own. Her voice was tight. Mr. Williams, I'm sorry to interrupt. Marcus gestured her in. She entered, closed the door softly behind her, and approached the table. We've received 214 press inquiries. Guest Ethic just confirmed your ethics flag is public. 3 ESG funds have called asking for statements. And she hesitated. And? Corporate wants an emergency meeting in 2 hours. The board is flying in from Chicago and LA. They want answers. Fast. Marcus nodded. Anything else? Jennifer looked down. Sarah Chen has submitted a written request to speak with you privately. Marcus didn't react. I told her I'd pass the message along, Jennifer added. Marcus turned to Yamamoto. Would you excuse me for a moment? Of course. Downstairs, Sarah waited in the back hallway, sitting on a bench normally reserved for staff breaks. Her blazer was folded in her lap, her posture rigid. She looked up as Marcus approached. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quickly. She swallowed hard. I didn't know who you were, but that's no excuse. I judged you immediately, and that's not how we're trained. That's not how I'm supposed to treat people. I embarrassed myself. I embarrassed the club. She paused, choking on her own breath. I understand if you want me gone. Marcus looked at her for a long time. You've been here 8 years, he said. Yes. How many others have you treated like you treated me? Sarah blinked, caught off guard. I don't know. That's part of the problem. She nodded slowly. I'm resigning, she said. Effective immediately. No severance required. I don't want a reference. I need to start over. Marcus considered her. Then start over, but not by disappearing, by learning. He reached into his portfolio and handed her a printed report. Here are the 23 complaints. I want you to read each one, carefully. Then I want you to reflect on how you made others feel when you thought they didn't matter. Sarah took the report with shaking hands. I will. And if you do that, Marcus added, then maybe one day you'll be in a position to stop someone else from doing what you did. Sarah nodded, and for the first time since the day began, she looked truly human. Back upstairs, Yamamoto had reviewed the updated press feed. 3 major news outlets have picked up the story, he said. You're trending worldwide. The public wants accountability. They'll get it. And your board? They'll get clarity. Then a choice. Yamamoto smiled. This situation may have cost you millions. It also may have saved us billions. The conference room was warm, too warm, but no one dared complain. 6 board members sat at the polished walnut table, each one gripping their coffee cups like anchors in a storm. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the city buzzed in its usual controlled chaos. But inside, things were unraveling fast. Marcus Williams stepped in, calm as ever. Behind him, Kenji Yamamoto followed, composed, observant, silent. The room went still. Victoria Sterling, chair of the board, cleared her throat. Marcus, she said, standing. We need to talk. Immediately. He didn't flinch. We will. Everyone took their seats, but no one relaxed. Victoria got straight to it. We've received nearly 300 media requests. Guest Ethic Corps has confirmed your flag. Level 4 violation, public record. The story has gone viral. Our PR team is scrambling. Marcus simply nodded. David Chen, CFO, leaned forward. Our stock is down 3.2%. Our liability insurance partners have frozen policy renewals. Investors are calling every 5 minutes. We've temporarily lost access to 3 ESG-aligned funding channels, added Sarah Kim, head of strategic partnerships. $470 million at stake. What the hell happened, Marcus? Asked board member James Morrison. You flagged your own company? I flagged one of our properties, Marcus corrected. And yes, I made it public. Intentionally. Silence. Then Victoria. Why? Marcus didn't look away. Because it was the truth, and the truth doesn't change just because we're the ones who don't like it. Kenji Yamamoto watched the room carefully. He wasn't there to speak, not yet. But his presence alone shifted the air. We're not here to debate whether or not there was misconduct, Marcus continued. We're here because the world saw what happened, in real time. And we have a choice. Spin it or own it. James scoffed. You could have handled this quietly. A warning, a suspension, something internal. And kept the cycle going, Marcus replied. That's exactly what's been happening for 2 years. 23 verified complaints tied to the same person. How many more did we ignore because no one was filming? The board said nothing. Amanda's live stream had ended, but the damage was alive and multiplying. Headlines, retweets, YouTube reaction videos, news coverage from 4 different countries. And Marcus wasn't running from it. He was steering into it. Let me be clear, Marcus said. This isn't a PR crisis. It's a values crisis. He walked to the screen at the end of the room and tapped the remote. A slide appeared. Guest Equity Accord. Underneath, 4 pillars of reform. Mandatory bias and ethics training for all client-facing staff. Anonymous incident reporting system linked directly to HQ AI-powered behavior monitoring in public spaces across all properties. Quarterly public transparency reports on equity metrics. This isn't a band-aid, Marcus said. It's structural reform, industry-wide, and we're going to lead it. James shook his head. This is overkill. We'll lose clients who feel we're going too woke. We'll lose clients who fear accountability, Marcus countered. And we'll gain the ones who value humanity. Sarah Kim added more thoughtfully. Some of our biggest B2B partnerships are with groups who require DEI benchmarks now. This actually strengthens our long-term leverage, if we survive the short-term fallout. Victoria was quiet. Kenji finally spoke. May I? All heads turned. Marcus invited me to observe today. My company, Yamamoto Global, is in final stages of a $340 million merger with Meridian Hospitality. We've been watching how you navigate adversity. Everyone sat straighter. What I saw yesterday, Kenji said, was a man remain dignified while being humiliated. What I saw today is a man choosing reform over reputation. He paused, then added, that's the kind of leader I want to build with. David Chen sighed, finally breaking the tension. You're serious about making this public, aren't you? I already did, Marcus replied. And I'm not walking it back. Victoria exchanged glances with the other board members. Then we have 2 decisions to make. 1, do we approve this reform framework? And 2, do we stand behind Marcus publicly? One by one, the hands went up. All 6. Unanimous. Marcus didn't gloat. He simply nodded. Thank you. Let's talk implementation. Jennifer Brooks entered minutes later with fresh updates. The live stream hit 4.6 million views overnight. 3 networks want Marcus for interviews. Over 300 membership requests have come in from diverse professionals who saw the video. 2 global ESG funds who had paused negotiations have resumed, citing visible, decisive ethics leadership. It was the kind of paradox that only happens in karmic justice stories. They'd gone viral for the wrong reason, but were now gaining the right attention for doing the right thing. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood alone in the same lobby where it all began. Sarah Chen was gone. Voluntarily, Tom Rodriguez, the veteran security chief, had requested reassignment, citing personal accountability. A new guest approached the front desk, an elderly black woman in a vivid cobalt scarf and polished cane. The new receptionist, a young Latina woman named Daniela, greeted her with a smile that wasn't forced. Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I assist you today? Marcus didn't say anything. He just watched. And for the first time all day, he allowed himself a small, private smile. Marcus Williams had faced boardrooms, governments, and billionaires. But this moment felt heavier. Not louder, not more dangerous, just heavier. The kind of weight that doesn't press down on your shoulders but settles in your chest. Quiet, unshakable. He stood alone in his executive suite on the 42nd floor, watching the city from behind soundproof glass. The sun had started to dip, casting a golden hue over the sprawl of Manhattan below. Behind him, the faint hum of his assistant's voice filtered through the partially open door. CNN Business confirmed the slot for 9 a.m. tomorrow. The Wall Street Journal wants a feature profile. The Today Show. They want to go live. Marcus didn't turn around. He was thinking about the word dignity, what it cost, what it meant when no one was watching, what it looked like when someone tried to take it from you, not with violence, but with a look, a tone, a question wrapped in doubt. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock. Jennifer Brooks stood in the doorway. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 days. "Marcus," she said softly. "They're here." He nodded. "Bring them in." A few minutes later, 3 members of the Meridian Club's local governance committee filed into the suite. They were not part of the corporate board. Rather, they represented the club's traditional leadership, private donors, legacy stakeholders, and local power brokers who thought they still ran things. At the center stood Harold Whitman, the 72-year-old investor who had witnessed everything from the lobby floor. He didn't sit. Neither did Marcus. "Thank you for coming," Marcus began, walking around the sleek conference table. The other 2 men, both in their 60s, both wearing the same navy blazers with the embroidered club crest, looked uncomfortable. Harold, in contrast, looked composed. "We're not here to apologize," one of them blurted. "Let's be clear about that." Marcus smiled faintly. "That's good, because I'm not here to accept one." The man blinked. "Then why?" "You're here," Marcus said. "Because this club sits on land leased from a holding company. That company belongs to me." The silence was immediate. "I've let this club operate independently for years, as long as it adhered to shared standards of service, respect, and ethics. What happened yesterday shattered that." Harold nodded once. "It did." Marcus walked to the window. "The lease agreement allows for full review and revocation if operating standards violate our brand charter." The second man scoffed. "You're going to shut down the most prestigious club in New York over one misunderstanding?" Marcus turned. "I'm not shutting anything down. I'm transforming it." He placed a folder on the table. "New lease terms, effective immediately, and a signed commitment to the guest equity accord, including bias audit compliance, behavior-based staff evaluations, and quarterly ethics reporting." The 2 committee members stiffened. "That's outrageous." "No," Marcus said. "What happened in the lobby was outrageous. This is just the invoice." Harold picked up the folder, read through it slowly. "Reasonable," he murmured. "Firm, but reasonable." The others exchanged looks. Harold closed the folder and looked at Marcus. "I've been a member here for 37 years. I've seen it at its best and its worst. This," he tapped the folder, "might save it." Marcus sat at the head of the table. This place was never just about exclusivity. At its heart, it was about excellence. Somewhere along the line, those 2 got confused. One of the men muttered, "You can't just rewrite the rules of legacy." "I'm not rewriting legacy," Marcus said. "I'm dragging it forward." Harold chuckled. "Well, damn." Marcus leaned back. "You can either evolve with it, or be remembered as the people who stood in the doorway while progress walked by." Silence followed. And then, quietly, Harold said, "We'll sign." The other 2 hesitated, but they nodded. As the men filed out, Harold lingered. "I've made my share of mistakes," he said. "But I've also watched you from a distance all these years. And I'll say this, you handled that lobby like a man who's already written the ending." Marcus gave a small smile. "I didn't write it. I just refused to let them write it for me." Harold extended a hand. Marcus shook it. "There's one thing I need to ask," Harold said. "That moment, when they surrounded you, when everyone looked at you like you were no one, how did you stay calm?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "Because I've been there before," he said. "And because somewhere deep inside, I believe God doesn't waste moments like that." Harold's expression shifted. Not to pity, but to understanding. Then he left. Marcus remained in the room for a while longer, thinking. Not about policy, not about PR, about what comes after. That evening, he met Yamamoto again for a private dinner upstairs. No reporters, no cameras. Just two men who had both spent their lives building empires and were now tasked with rebuilding something far more fragile: trust. Yamamoto poured the tea this time. "You think the worst is over?" he asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, the worst is what comes next. When we have to do it again at every location. Every staff meeting, every training, every policy we rewrite." Yamamoto smiled. "That's what change feels like." Marcus looked out at the skyline. "No," he said. "That's what earned change feels like." By the time the sun rose over Manhattan the next morning, the fallout had already begun to ripple across the hospitality industry. At exactly 6:04 a.m., Guest Ethic Corps issued a public compliance bulletin. Status: non-compliant. Entity: Meridian Club, Park Avenue, NYC. Reason: Level 4 flag. Verified bias violation. Effective: Immediate Impacted Systems, ESG Capital Access, Insurance Compliance Network, Booking Integrity Chain. That alert didn't just show up in private admin dashboards. It flashed across 42 major properties, 17 booking platforms, and into the inboxes of over 300 equity-aligned partners across the country. By 7:17 a.m., the first call came in from an international travel consortium. Is this an isolated case or reflective of broader Meridian hospitality culture? By 7:34 a.m., 3 ESG investment groups had paused further activity with the brand pending formal review. By 8:01 a.m., 2 high-profile hospitality bloggers published timelines of the incident, naming names, linking back to Amanda Hutchinson's live stream, which had now crossed 6.2 million views. In the corporate headquarters of Meridian Hospitality, Marcus Williams stood at the center of it all, calm, controlled, and already 3 steps ahead. His executive team filed into the war room one by one. On the screens behind him were split feeds, real-time guest ethics status alerts, stock movement charts, live trending topics on Twitter and LinkedIn, a media schedule already half-filled for the day. Jennifer Brooks sat nearest to him, not out of comfort, but accountability. Across from her, Daniel Reese, the VP of Risk and Compliance, opened his laptop and sighed. "I'm just gonna say it. No one in this industry has ever made a move like this before." Marcus didn't look away from the screen. "We didn't make a move," he replied. "We told the truth." At 9 a.m. sharp, Marcus stepped onto a small stage set up inside the company's internal broadcast studio. No fluff, no press conference frills, just one mic and one camera. He began without introduction. "Yesterday, something happened in our club that wasn't new, but this time, someone recorded it. This time, someone got called out for what's been happening to guests who don't fit a certain mold. And this time, we're not burying it." The live stream broadcast across all employee devices, investor channels, and internal portals. "We've suspended operations at that location temporarily, but this isn't about damage control. This is about cultural control. From this point forward, the values we publish will match the values we enforce." He laid out the guest equity accord in full. He didn't blink. He didn't sugarcoat. And when it was done, tens of thousands of employees across 47 properties and 6 countries sat in stunned silence at their desks, in break rooms, on tablets at check-in desks, realizing this wasn't a memo. This was a pivot. Meanwhile, across the street from Meridian HQ, news crews swarmed the sidewalk. Cameras rolled. Anchors rehearsed their intros. Marcus's executive assistant, Terrence, stepped into the room with a tablet. "You're booked for the Today Show, CNN Business, and we just got a call from Bloomberg. Everyone wants the how, not the what." Marcus nodded. "Start with CNN. Schedule the others after tomorrow's Ethics Council hearing." "Copy that." Jennifer turned to him as Terrence left. "You know what this means, don't you?" "That we're going to lose a few powerful friends," Marcus replied, "and gain a few powerful enemies. I've been black and rich in America long enough to know what comes with both." At 11:15 a.m., Marcus joined a virtual meeting with senior executives from Air Vista, Le Grand Hotels, and Coralon International, three major industry players who had seen the public ethics flag and wanted clarity. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, "let's skip pleasantries. You're wondering whether this will hurt you by association. We're wondering if you've started a trend we're not ready for," one exec admitted. Marcus didn't hesitate. "You should have been ready years ago. We all should have." The tone wasn't arrogant. It was tired, steeled. Another executive leaned in. "So what happens next?" "You'll be receiving a formal invite to co-sign the Guest Equity Accord. If you don't, our mutual booking partners will be made aware. If you do, I'll share our compliance systems with your teams. This is bigger than Meridian now." There was no threat in his voice, just inevitability. After a long pause, all three executives agreed to join a joint reform alliance. Change, Marcus knew, spreads not by pressure, but proof. And now, the proof was undeniable. By late afternoon, the Meridian Club itself was undergoing a transformation. Daniela, the new receptionist, had already begun retraining staff on new standards. The guest ethic compliance sensors, discrete cameras with behavior monitoring AI, were being calibrated and tested by the IT team. Former staff were being reviewed. Some were asked not to return. Some were invited to retrain, but only if they signed personal conduct pledges. Marcus watched from the back hallway, arms crossed, not as a tyrant, but as a steward. He turned to Roberto, the head chef who had watched the original incident through the kitchen window. "I saw how you handled your team yesterday," Marcus said. Roberto nodded. "I just told them, watch, don't react, listen first." "That's leadership," Marcus said. "Effective immediately. You're now the hospitality ethics liaison for this property. You'll lead by example." Roberto looked stunned. "I'm just the chef. You're the only one who noticed it was wrong before I ever said a word." At 5:32 p.m., Marcus returned to his private office. The sun was beginning to fall behind the skyline. His phone buzzed. A private message from Kenji Yamamoto. "Just landed in Tokyo. Your statement aired here. Japanese networks are calling it the Meridian Awakening. Proud to be your partner." Marcus smiled. He replied, "Thank you. This is only the beginning." He looked up and saw a small framed quote on his shelf, something his grandmother had given him years ago. "You can't change people's hearts overnight, but you can reset the room they walk into." He believed that now more than ever. Just before he left for the day, Marcus stood in the same lobby where everything had started. It was quieter now, less judgmental, more aware. A teenage boy in a hoodie and scuffed sneakers stepped hesitantly through the revolving doors, holding an envelope. Daniela greeted him warmly. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the essay contest," the boy said, awkward. "My teacher said it was hosted by someone here." Marcus approached. "I'm someone," he said, smiling. "You're in the right place." The boy blinked. "You're the guy from the video." Marcus nodded. "I'm also the guy starting a scholarship fund for young people like you who deserve to walk into any room and be seen." The boy looked down. "Even if I look like this?" Marcus smiled wider. "Especially because you look like that." As the boy handed him the envelope, Marcus looked around the lobby one last time. No panic buttons, no forced smiles, no shame. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time in a long time, something godlike had settled in the room. Not in power, not in fear, but in dignity. Marcus stood in front of the massive 18-foot glass wall that looked out over the midtown skyline. The boardroom behind him was full. 22 executives from various divisions of Meridian Hospitality, 2 legal advisors, 3 diversity consultants, and a silent observer from the Ethics Oversight Board. The door clicked shut behind the last person. No one spoke, because everyone knew what this was. Not a meeting, not a press response, not damage control. This was a reckoning. Jennifer Brooks, sitting to Marcus's right, gave a small nod. Her laptop open, notes in hand. Marcus didn't need a screen. He didn't need a deck. He had one thing: conviction. He stepped away from the window, faced the table, and spoke with a steady calm. You've all seen the footage. You've read the compliance flags. You've felt the heat from our stakeholders. So let's not waste time defending the indefensible. The air in the room tightened. One of the older board members, a man named Trevor Grant, CFO for 17 years, leaned forward. Marcus, with respect, we're bleeding investor trust. ESG funding is stalled. The booking partners are watching us more closely than ever, Marcus finished. And you know what? Good. A murmur swept the room. Marcus didn't flinch, because this isn't a PR crisis. It's a moral one. And if we don't move with purpose now, we will be remembered not for how we built this company, but how we ignored the people we built it on. There was a moment of silence. Then, from the far end of the table, a soft voice broke through. It was Mariah Ellison, head of guest services, one of the only black women on the senior team. I've been in this company 12 years, she said, and I've watched this culture whisper behind doors, downplay things that didn't look like emergencies to them. Her voice trembled, not from fear, from exhaustion. Mariah glanced around. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to lose my seat at the table. But now I realize the table was never stable. Marcus met her eyes and nodded. From that moment on, the meeting shifted. Trevor spoke again, but this time with less pushback, more curiosity. What exactly are you proposing? Jennifer pulled up a document titled E3 Blueprint and passed out hard copies. The name stood for Equity, Ethics, Enforcement. It was Marcus's 3-phase operational plan, and it was non-negotiable. Phase 1. Internal audit. Every property undergoes a behavior-based ethics evaluation. Bias response training is mandatory. Staff promoted under outdated loyalty systems will be re-evaluated. Guest incident logs must be re-reviewed for patterns of discrimination. Phase 2. External certification. All properties must submit to Guest Ethic Corps' independent review panel. Properties rated below A will be publicly flagged and temporarily delisted from all booking platforms. A newly created Meridian Fairness Council will handle internal appeals, led by guests, not just executives. Phase 3. Structural reform. Revamp of hiring pipelines, especially in leadership. Profit-sharing incentives tied to staff behavior and ethics scores. Quarterly reports made public, not just to shareholders, but to guests. An older white executive cleared his throat. That sounds radical. It's late, not radical, Marcus replied. And it should have happened before I ever had to be the case study. Laughter rippled, but no one laughed long. Trevor sighed, leafing through the packet. Will we lose staff? Yes, Marcus said. Will we lose properties? Possibly. Will we lose money? Temporarily. He paused. But if we do this right, we'll gain something we haven't had in years. He looked at them one by one. Trust, not just from investors, from people who walk through our doors and don't have to wonder if they belong. By now, even the skeptics were listening. Daniel Reese, VP of Risk and Compliance, sat forward. I'd like to pilot this at our Austin and Montreal branches, he said. They're already staffed with more diverse leadership, and they've been pushing for this internally. Marcus nodded. Approved. Mariah added, let's use the Philly property too. That GM's been fighting for this for months. A small floodgate had opened. The people who'd kept their heads down were now raising their hands. Not because it was safe, but because someone had finally made it safe. An hour later, the board voted. Unanimous. E3 blueprint adopted. Rollout immediate. Public communication in 48 hours. But it wasn't the vote that stayed with Marcus. It was the moment afterward, when nearly everyone lingered. No rush to bolt to meetings, no whispered sidebars, just a room full of powerful people, stunned by what accountability felt like. Later that night, Marcus stood alone in the employee break room of the flagship property, the one where the incident had happened. He walked past vending machines and cracked leather couches and paused beside a corkboard filled with printed staff schedules and birthday notices. There, pinned in the center, was a handwritten sign someone had scrawled that morning. "This is a different company now. Say something if you see something." He smiled. Then, as he turned to leave, he saw Amanda Hutchinson, the young woman who had recorded the original video, walk in. She stopped, startled. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wasn't expecting to find that sign either," he said, nodding toward the corkboard. Amanda shifted awkwardly. "I didn't post it to go viral." "I know," Marcus said. "I just couldn't watch it happen again." He stepped closer. "You didn't just witness something, you forced the rest of us too." Amanda looked down. "My manager said they might let me go." "They won't." Her eyes flicked up. "You're rehired, full-time, not front desk, communications team." Her mouth dropped open. "Wait, what?" "You see clearly, you speak honestly, and you know how to handle a camera." He handed her a company badge. New title, new pay, new start. As she walked out, stunned, Marcus whispered quietly, "Sometimes, justice doesn't come in the form of punishment. It comes in the form of placement, putting the right people where they can make the most change." He exhaled, and for the first time in days, he didn't feel angry. He felt aligned. The real work was just beginning, but for once, he wasn't alone in doing it. The lobby of the Meridian Club was quieter now, not because of fewer guests. In fact, more people were checking in than usual, but because things had changed. Tone, behavior, atmosphere. Staff no longer looked hurried, suspicious, or hollow-eyed. They looked aware. And at the center of that quiet awareness stood Amanda Hutchinson, no longer in a front desk uniform, but in a tailored navy blazer, badge clipped to her hip, camera bag across her chest. She wasn't on trial anymore. She was documenting the transformation. In the back office, Marcus reviewed security reports from 3 other properties. He was already coordinating Phase 2 rollout of the E3 blueprint in 5 cities and had quietly funded a $5 guest dignity training grant for hospitality startups. But today wasn't about announcements. It was personal. There was a knock. Jennifer Brooks peeked in. "She's here." Marcus closed the file and stood. He knew who she meant. The receptionist, Samantha Klein, the woman who had made the call. He met her in the empty lounge, the same one where just a week earlier he'd been questioned like he didn't belong. She stood when he entered. Her posture was unsure, lips pressed together, a folder clutched tight in both hands. "Mr. Williams," she said, voice low, "thank you for agreeing to meet." He nodded, but didn't sit. "I asked for this," she continued, "because I wanted to return the uniform. I didn't want it mailed back like I was disappearing." She opened the folder. Inside was her staff badge, folded vest, a handwritten resignation letter, short, polite. And on top, something else. A photo. Marcus glanced down. It was from the hotel's grand opening, a wide angle of the original front desk team. Samantha was in the back row, younger, smiling wide. "I was proud that day," she said. "First in my family to work at a 5-star brand. I thought I made it." She paused. "And then I saw you, standing in that lobby. And I knew the version of success I believed in was built on someone else being dismissed. She lowered her eyes. I didn't recognize you, but that's not the point, is it? No, Marcus replied quietly. It's not. She nodded, eyes glassy. I've been doing a lot of listening since then. Reading, watching interviews, learning what I wasn't taught in training, in school, in life. There was silence between them, a long one. Then Marcus finally sat. You're not the first person to hurt someone and realize it too late. You won't be the last. What matters is what you do next. Samantha reached into the folder again. This time, she handed him a sealed envelope. Marcus raised a brow. It's not for you, she said quickly. It's for your staff, the ones who were watching that day. I didn't just humiliate you. I humiliated them too. He took it, didn't open it. Have you written many letters like this? No, but I think I'll be writing them for the rest of my life. He set the envelope aside and leaned forward. You made a choice that day, Samantha, a bad one. But now you're making a better one. That doesn't erase the past, but it helps repair the future. She nodded slowly. I'm not asking for a job back or forgiveness. I just wanted to own what I did in front of the person I wronged. He met her eyes. You just did. She stood. And as she turned to leave, he said, wherever you go next, make sure you bring this lesson with you. Not just for yourself, but for the next person who looks like me and walks into your space. After she left, Marcus sat with the envelope still sealed. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he called Mariah from guest services. Hey, he said, I've got something for the staff bulletin. What is it? An apology letter, the real kind. No headlines, no spin. Mariah exhaled. I'll read it out loud during orientation tomorrow. Later that evening, Amanda sent Marcus a clip from the lobby camera feed. It showed an elderly black couple checking in. The husband fumbled with his ID, confused by the tablet check-in system. The new concierge, a young white man named Jonah, stepped around the desk. He didn't sigh. He didn't wave them off. He didn't make them feel small. He bent down, smiled warmly, and said, Take your time. We're honored to have you here. Marcus played that clip twice, and for the first time since the incident, he felt something new rising in his chest. Not rage, not grief, not even satisfaction, just a simple, steady hope. One that whispered, this is what it looks like when the system actually learns. The ballroom at the Langston Convention Center buzzed with tension. Rows of luxury hospitality CEOs, media executives, investment leaders, and compliance officers from across the nation filled the room. Some came in out of pressure, some curiosity, and others just to avoid the optics of not showing up. At the center stage stood a backdrop with simple white letters across a midnight blue banner. Dignity isn't decor, it's infrastructure. And beneath that, the Guest Ethic Corps National Conference. Marcus Williams was backstage. He had been calm all morning, even through rehearsals, interviews, and last-minute speaker cancellations. But now, as the clock neared 10 o'clock a.m., he felt a tightness he hadn't expected. This moment wasn't just a corporate milestone, it was personal. Because this wasn't the kind of story where the billionaire just buys the building and fires everyone. This was the story where the system that allowed it all to happen had to answer, publicly. Jennifer Brooks approached, earpiece in, tablet in hand. They're seated. Media's live. FAA delegates are here. The ESG panel has 5 reps. Marcus nodded, looking out at the crowd through the curtain. And the reporters? Front row, she replied. You'll be quoted by dinner. Marcus straightened his jacket. Then he stepped out. The applause was polite, not thunderous, not icy. A room full of people waiting to see if this man they once whispered about would actually say something they couldn't ignore. He didn't open with a joke. He didn't open with his resume. He opened with this. 9 weeks ago, I booked a room under an alias at my own hotel. I wasn't testing the staff. I was testing the system. And the system failed. Publicly, painfully, predictably. Every head in the room turned a little tighter. No deflection, no framing. Just truth. We work in an industry built on smiling faces and invisible hierarchies. But when those hierarchies go unchallenged, they harden into habits. And those habits turn into harm. A slide behind him changed. A grainy still of that day at the Meridian Club. Security approaching, his face calm. The staff member behind the desk looking nervous but cold. It wasn't a gotcha moment. It was a mirror. Marcus continued. The question we should be asking today isn't, how could this happen? It's, how many times did it happen before, and nobody noticed because the person wasn't me? That made some guests in the back lower their eyes. That's why we built the guest ethic core system. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to shame staff, but to expose patterns that leadership has ignored for years. He gestured toward the screen as the next slide showed 3 national metrics. 71% of BIPOC guests reported microaggressions at check-in in the past year. 43% of front desk teams in luxury hotels had never received any implicit bias training. And most damning of all, only 6% of guest complaints tied to discrimination ever reached executive review. A wave of murmuring swept the room. Marcus paused and then asked calmly, "What would happen to your brand if those numbers showed up under your name tomorrow?" Silence. He didn't need to raise his voice, because truth hits hardest when it's spoken quietly. Then came the part no one expected. Marcus introduced Samantha Klein. She walked on stage slowly, not hidden, not spun. "Some of you know me," she said softly. "I was the front desk agent who made the call." The audience shifted uncomfortably. "But I'm not here to defend what I did. I'm here because that one mistake was the result of years of silent training. The kind that never shows up in manuals, but echoes in the looks you're told to give when someone doesn't look like they belong." She continued, "I wasn't fired. I resigned. And Marcus gave me something I didn't expect, not a second chance. A platform to tell the truth." She stepped aside. Applause this time was louder, because nobody expected accountability without spectacle. Marcus returned to the mic. "Change doesn't happen with hashtags and headlines. It happens when the people who benefit from the system start to rebuild it anyway." He looked directly at the front row, where leaders from 4 major hotel chains sat, expressionless. "You don't have to believe in equity to lose money from the lack of it. And trust me, your guests will start choosing hotels based on dignity scores just as fast as they check for thread counts." The final slide appeared. New standard, public guest ethics score. First 11 hotels to be rated. Live next week. Audit reports, transparent. Ratings shared across booking platforms. Impact immediate. The room erupted, not in applause, in talking, gasps, outrage, camera flashes. But that was the point. You don't shake an industry by whispering. Backstage afterward, Marcus sat down in the green room. He felt both heavy and free. A weight had been lifted, not the one of guilt, but of silence. Jennifer walked in, breathless. "It's trending. Major outlets picked it up. Guest Ethic Core just got 4,700 property requests for assessment in the last hour." He blinked. "That fast? People want the pressure off their backs," she said. "And they finally believe this system might give them cover and clarity." Mariah called 30 minutes later. "Marcus, a guest just left a note at the Philly property front desk." He smiled. "Read it." She did. "I checked in today and wasn't asked what room I could afford. I was asked how my flight was. That's the first time in 3 years that happened. Keep going." A tired traveler who finally didn't have to explain himself. Marcus leaned back, phone pressed to his ear, eyes closed. For a moment, it didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like the first real breath he'd taken in years. Because the conference wasn't the end. It was the start of a covenant. A promise between business and humanity, between leadership and legacy. And in the quiet afterward, he whispered to himself, "We don't need gods, we just need courage." 3 days after the conference, the ripple turned tidal. News outlets weren't just covering the guest ethic core system, they were dissecting it. TikTok was flooded with duets of Marcus's keynote. LinkedIn was overflowing with hospitality managers suddenly passionate about dignity metrics. But not all reactions were praise. Some called it performative, some said it was overcorrecting, and a few whispered what always gets whispered when power shifts. He's making it about race again. Marcus had heard it before, he just never cared less than he did now. Because unlike the media storm, the real work had already started behind the scenes. At Meridian Club properties across the country, quiet transformations were underway. New signage appeared in lobbies. Respect is not a request, it's a requirement. Bias escalation reporting tools were live, anonymous, real-time, irreversible. Guest ethic core dashboards now pulsed behind front desks like defibrillators for broken hospitality systems. And at the core of it all, something radical was happening. People were pausing. Before a glance, before a tone shift, before saying, "Are you sure you're at the right place?" At the New Orleans location, an elderly Korean couple was welcomed by name, not asked 3 times to repeat it. In Seattle, a transgender guest finally checked in without being misgendered. No questions, no snide tone. And in DC, an Iraqi-American professor broke down in tears when a front desk associate remembered the pronunciation of her name. It was working, not just on paper, but in human behavior. Meanwhile, Marcus had retreated from the noise. He didn't do interviews, he didn't tweet, he didn't even take the calls from CEOs who suddenly wanted to partner. He was focused on something else, a letter, one he had started writing weeks ago. Not for business, not for press, but for a boy named Elijah. Elijah was 17, the son of one of the housekeepers at the Philadelphia Meridian Club. He had written to Marcus months ago after seeing the footage of what happened in the lobby. His message was short. "They made you feel like you didn't belong, but I felt that way my whole life. So now I know I'm not crazy. I just wasn't supposed to stay quiet." Marcus never forgot those words. And now, with everything finally shifting, he knew what to say back. He wrote, "Elijah, you weren't crazy. You were witnessing what so many of us have lived. A system designed to smile in our faces while scanning our worth by zip code or skin tone. But that doesn't mean we burn it all down. It means we build it better. And now, you'll never have to wonder if that's possible, because you've seen it start. Your name will be one of the first in the Guest Dignity Scholarship Fund we're launching this fall. Keep watching. But more importantly, keep building. With you, Marcus." He sealed the letter himself. No digital signature, no assistant. Just ink, intention, and a legacy passed down on purpose. That evening, he stood at the penthouse window of the Meridian Club's flagship New York location. The very one where he'd once been treated like a trespasser in his own house. He watched the city pulse below. The rain had started to fall. Not heavy, gentle, like the sky was exhaling. He wasn't seeking revenge anymore. He wasn't looking for validation. He was witnessing something rarer, accountability. Not loud, not viral, just woven into policies, staff handbooks, and morning check-in protocols. Jennifer entered quietly. "They've just signed on," she said, handing him a document. "Skylux Hotels, all 87 properties. They want to run a beta version of Guest Ethic Core this quarter." Marcus nodded, scanning the contract. "No modifications?" "None." He smiled faintly. "Funny how people move when their silence costs them millions." She laughed, then paused. "You think it'll last?" He looked out at the skyline again. "If we keep showing them that power isn't something you hold, it's something you honor, then yes." And in that moment, the man who once booked a room under a fake name to see if he still mattered, stood as the architect of a new reality. One where names, faces, colors, pronouns, accents, and beliefs weren't filtered by suspicion, but greeted with humanity. The buzz in the room was different this time. It wasn't tense like the conference. It wasn't corporate like the early investor meetings. It was warm, filled with community leaders, non-profit heads, educators, and families. The venue? A converted library in Newark, New Jersey, the first place Marcus Williams ever gave a speech as a teenager, back when he had no money, no company, no audience, just his voice. Tonight, the Guest Ethic Foundation was officially launching its first community scholarship round. But something else had happened, quietly, and everyone in the room knew it. Marcus had become a symbol, not just of success, but of what happens when you carry dignity into the boardroom and back home again. The mayor gave a short opening speech. The applause was kind, but everyone was waiting. Finally, the MC stepped up to the mic. There are few people who shift the landscape of an entire industry, even fewer who do it quietly, with grace, not ego. She turned to the side stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Marcus Williams. He walked out in a charcoal gray suit. No tie, no security detail, no entourage. Just the same calm he always carried. He didn't speak right away. He looked around the room first, at the front row high school students, at the retired hotel workers, at the same security guard who once got demoted for refusing to racially profile guests. Then he smiled. I've been called a CEO, a founder, a reformer, but the title I'm proudest of is guest. Laughter, applause. Because being a guest means trusting a space that doesn't belong to you, and being treated with the respect of someone who does. And that's all any of us are doing, walking through this world hoping we'll be welcomed. He paused. I booked a room under a fake name to see if the system I helped build would welcome someone who looked like me, if they didn't know it was me. And what I found was what many of you already knew. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly how it was designed, for a few, and ignoring the rest. A hush fell over the room. He continued. But now, we're not just redesigning the system. We're teaching it how to recognize all of us, fully, freely. He turned and gestured to a small group of teens standing nearby. Among them, a familiar face. Elijah, the 17-year-old who had written him that note. Meet the first round of guest ethics scholars, young people who've seen dignity withheld and chose to rise anyway. Applause swelled. Elijah looked stunned, not because he was surprised, but because he was seen. After the ceremony, Marcus moved quietly through the crowd. People didn't mob him. They spoke softly, shook his hand, thanked him, told stories. A middle-aged Latina hotel cleaner hugged him and said, "My daughter didn't know people like us could build systems. Now she thinks she can build one too." A young front desk associate said, "Because of the training, I caught myself stereotyping a guest last week. I reset. I apologized. I've never done that before, but now I want to." Near the back of the room, Samantha Klein, the former receptionist who had once called security on Marcus, stood with a group of new hires from another hotel. She caught his eye and smiled. He walked over. "Training them already?" he joked. She laughed. "Trying. They keep asking what it felt like to be part of a story like this." He looked around the room, at all the lives being changed by a mistake no one had hidden from. Tell them it felt like being human, and deciding that was enough. That night, before leaving, Marcus stood alone near the library's front steps. The city around him was loud, alive, but for a moment, everything felt still. He didn't need a headline. He didn't need another contract. He just needed what every guest, every person, deserves: to be recognized. It didn't happen with a press release. No big headlines, no social media countdowns, no viral leaks. But on the first day of the new quarter, something changed in the hospitality industry. Something invisible but unignorable. The guest ethic core system, once questioned, once dismissed, once treated as Marcus Williams's personal crusade, was now the industry standard. The FAA, the Department of Labor, and 3 of the largest ESG-backed venture firms had signed an ethics alignment agreement, using guest ethic metrics as a condition for funding and compliance. Hotels couldn't just perform kindness anymore. They had to prove it. At the center of it all, Marcus didn't sit in a corner office anymore. He didn't want one. He'd quietly stepped down as CEO of Meridian Club 2 weeks prior, not out of defeat, but by design. He wasn't interested in being a boss anymore. He wanted to be a builder. Now, he traveled. Quietly. Privately. He would check into hotels anonymously, not to test, but to feel. To sense whether the shifts he started had reached the people who'd never show up in quarterly reports. The janitor in Tulsa, the new receptionist in Detroit, the bellhop in Oakland. And more often than not, they had. One evening, at a small hotel near Charlotte, a young man at the front desk noticed his name while checking him in. "Wait," the man whispered, eyes wide. "You're the Marcus Williams?" Marcus smiled. "Just a guest tonight." The man paused. "You changed everything, sir." Marcus looked at him, at his face, his presence, his grace. "No," he replied. "We did." Back in New York, the lobby of the Meridian flagship now featured a new wall. Not a photo of Marcus, not a company timeline, but a set of framed words. Welcome every soul like they could own the building, because one day they just might. A 6-year-old girl once stopped to read it aloud. Her mom smiled and said, "He's the man who made sure no one ever forgets our names again." The girl tilted her head. "Was he a god or something?" Her mom laughed. "No, baby. He was just someone who remembered who he was." And that's how Marcus's story would be told. Not in boardrooms, but in whispers between generations. Of the man who walked in under an alias, got profiled like a problem, and walked out having rewritten the rules for how the world welcomes people. No medals, no statues, just policy, presence, and proof that dignity didn't need permission. Have you ever been judged before they even knew your name? Tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever walked into a room where you didn't feel welcome, but walked out owning it. "Security, he refuses to leave." The words echoed across the marble lobby, slicing through the silence like a blade. Sarah Chen's voice was sharp, clipped, and carried just enough of that rehearsed corporate concern to mask what it really was. Judgment. Her right hand hovered over the panic button under the mahogany counter. Her left hand pointed directly at the black man in the tailored navy suit. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, still, calm, silent. What no one in that room knew was this: he owned the building. And in exactly 7 minutes, one tap on his phone would trigger an alert that would freeze $1.1 billion in hospitality investments, pull compliance ratings from 3 luxury groups, and force an entire industry to explain why a CEO had to prove his humanity to walk into his own conference room. But for now, he simply said, "I have a reservation." 2:47 p.m. The Meridian Club, Park Avenue, New York City. Marcus Williams had walked into hundreds of luxury properties in his life. But this was the first time he decided to test this one. He had built Meridian Hospitality Group from scratch, from 2 rental spaces in Midtown to 47 high-end properties and $840 million in annual revenue. The Meridian Club was one of those properties, not his crown jewel, but a place with prestige and problems. He'd heard whispers from his people, complaints, patterns, things that didn't show up on spreadsheets. So today, he wore no lapel pin, no entourage, no luxury branding, just initials on a reservation, M. Williams, a soft test, a quiet audit. And it was failing, spectacularly. Behind the reception desk, Sarah Chen narrowed her eyes. She'd been here for 8 years. She knew every executive, every donor, every board spouse. She could sniff out someone who didn't fit. And this man, he didn't fit. "You must be lost," she said, her practiced smile stretched tight. "Service entrance is around back." Marcus's eyes met hers, calm, steady, unapologetic. "I have a reservation," he repeated. "Private meeting room number 3. Sarah tapped the keyboard. The screen lit up with the booking. M. Williams, 3 o'clock p.m., room 3, party of 2. Her fingers froze. But instead of pausing to ask herself questions, she defaulted to certainty. "That must be a system error," she said curtly. "We don't take walk-ins, and members typically book weeks in advance." "It's not a walk-in," Marcus replied. "It was booked yesterday. Should be under my company's name if you check." "I don't need to check again. This club is private and we follow strict protocol. You'll need to leave." From the corner lounge, a woman in pearls had begun filming. Her phone tilted slightly as she whispered to her stream, "Something's happening. They're accusing this guy of trespassing. He looks calm, though." The red dot blinked. Live. Marcus remained still. No anger, no raised voice, just presence. On his wrist, a platinum Patek Philippe caught the light, a flash of understated power. From behind the desk, Sarah stiffened. Her hand slipped under the counter, just slightly, pressing the silent alert for security. A door opened. Tom Rodriguez, head of security, stepped into the lobby. Tall, 23 years on the job, ex-military. He didn't miss much, but right now, he read the tension, the posture, the silence. Something about it didn't feel like a threat. It felt off. "Sarah?" he asked, voice low. "This man is insisting he has a reservation. He refuses to show ID. I've asked him to leave." Marcus turned to Tom. "My guest is arriving in 10 minutes, he said. "He's flying in from Tokyo. Room 3 is booked." Tom hesitated. "Your guest's name?" "Kenji Yamamoto." The woman live streaming gasped. "Wait, Yamamoto? As in Yamamoto Global? The hotel tech billionaire?" Her stream viewer count jumped from 120 to 400 in seconds. Comments rolled in. "Why is no one helping this man? This is discrimination." "That's a billion-dollar name he just dropped." Sarah crossed her arms. "Anyone can say they're meeting a billionaire. Doesn't make it true." "Perhaps," Marcus said softly. "You can call the room and confirm the booking." "Use your own phone," she snapped. "Outside." Tom's radio crackled. Backup was already heading to the lobby. "Don't make any calls," Tom said. "Let's get this sorted first." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand." He reached into his jacket pocket, no sudden movement, and retrieved his wallet. From it, he pulled a sleek black Centurion Amex, a first-class boarding pass from JFK to Tokyo, and a plain white business card. He placed the card gently on the counter. Sarah stared at it, then leaned in. Her face drained of color. Jennifer Brooks, the club's general manager, stepped into the lobby just then. "Sarah?" she asked. "What's going on?" Sarah couldn't speak. She simply pointed at the card. Jennifer picked it up. Marcus D. Williams, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Hospitality Group. Her hand trembled. "You're the owner?" she whispered. Marcus nodded. "For the last 8 years." The live stream viewer count passed 1,200. Comments exploded. "They called security on the owner?" This is about to go viral. "That woman is done." Tom took a full step back, slowly removing his hand from his radio. Jennifer swallowed. "Mr. Williams, I apologize. We weren't informed." "You don't need to apologize," Marcus said, tone even. "Just pay attention." His eyes met hers. "Because in 6 minutes, a man who controls $340 million in active merger interest will walk through that door, and he's going to see what your brand of hospitality looks like when no one's watching." Silence. Even the music in the background seemed to fade. Sarah's hand dropped away from the panic button. Her jaw trembled. In the far corner, the woman live streaming whispered, "He said nothing. Didn't argue. Just let the whole room reveal themselves. She turned the camera back to her face. This is what power looks like. Quiet, measured, and deadly precise. The lobby of the Meridian Club no longer felt like a place of quiet luxury. It felt like a pressure chamber. Even the air had shifted. The hush that once belonged to crystal chandeliers and whispered deals was now replaced by a different kind of silence. Thick, electric, waiting to explode. 1,500 viewers. Amanda Hutchinson's live stream ticked upward with every breath. She didn't move her phone. She didn't need to. The scene unfolding spoke for itself. Sarah Chen, the poised and always controlled head receptionist, stood frozen, one hand clenched at her side. The other still hovered somewhere near the panic button she had already pressed once too many times. Across the counter, Marcus Williams remained exactly where he'd been since he arrived. Still, composed, completely in control. Jennifer Brooks, the general manager, had just read the business card Marcus placed on the desk. She was still holding it, as if unsure whether to drop it or frame it. Marcus D. Williams, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Hospitality Group. Her lips parted, but the words didn't come out. Her years of managing high-net-worth clients, of smoothing over boardroom tensions and celebrity complaints, had not prepared her for this. Not for calling security on the man who owned the building. Not for live stream cameras documenting every second. And certainly not for what would come next. Mr. Williams, Jennifer began, her voice breaking mid-sentence. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He simply glanced at his watch. 5 minutes. Jennifer blinked. Until what? Until Mr. Yamamoto walks into this lobby and witnesses everything you've done to his business partner. Amanda, the live streamer, whispered dramatically, Yamamoto, as in Kenji Yamamoto. This just keeps getting better. Marcus looked back at Jennifer. I'd prefer he didn't find 3 security guards around me when he arrives. Wouldn't you? Jennifer nodded sharply, turning to Tom Rodriguez and the 2 other guards who had appeared moments ago. Back to post, she said quickly. All of you. Tom hesitated for a beat, then nodded and stepped away, giving Marcus a slight, almost respectful nod. The other 2 guards followed silently. The pressure in the room lightened, just a touch, but not for Sarah. Sarah Chen hadn't moved. Her face was pale now, jaw tight, eyes darting between Marcus and the live stream feed visible on Amanda's phone screen. She recognized herself. She recognized what this would become. Mr. Williams, Jennifer said, shifting into damage control mode. I'd like to escort you to the conference room now. Personally, we'll prepare anything you need. Drinks, food, additional support. No, Marcus said calmly. My guest expects to find me here, in the lobby. Of course, Jennifer replied, swallowing her discomfort. That's fine. Whatever you prefer. Marcus didn't respond. His eyes settled back on Sarah. Amanda's stream viewers flooded the comments. Apologize, lady. He deserves a public apology. Nah, too late. She hit that panic button fast. She needs to be fired, on the spot. Sarah turned to Jennifer, almost pleading. I didn't know who he was, she whispered. I was just following protocol. Marcus's voice cut through clean and cool. No, you weren't. Sarah looked at him, startled. If I had walked in wearing a name tag and a club blazer, he continued, you wouldn't have asked for a membership card. You wouldn't have threatened to call security. You wouldn't have assumed I didn't belong. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. Marcus went on. You didn't follow protocol. You followed instinct, and that instinct was biased. Amanda's viewers exploded. Read him quoting her soul. Say it louder for the ones in the back. That's not just a call-out. That's a mirror. Suddenly, Sarah's computer pinged, an email alert. She looked at the screen and froze. Her hands dropped to her sides. Everything okay? Jennifer asked, trying to regain footing. Sarah didn't speak. Her eyes just stared at the subject line. Marcus already knew what it was. He had flagged the incident in the guest ethic core system. a system he himself had co-created years ago to evaluate the ethical behavior of front-facing hospitality staff in premium-level venues. The flag triggered an immediate ethics compliance review. Live. Visible to every ESG fund, every premium investor, every global travel consortium connected to the system. Sarah's screen now showed a red warning. Ethics status. Non-compliant. Reason, level 4 discrimination. Verified owner escalation. Marcus leaned forward slightly. You may want to notify your board, he said. Within the next 24 hours, you'll lose your premium compliance badge. That's tied to your liability insurance and your eligibility for 3 different ESG-aligned investment funds. Amanda gasped. He didn't just drop a title, he dropped the system. Jennifer's phone rang. She didn't answer. The next call came through instantly, and the next. Corporate, then PR, then legal. Her face turned white. Mr. Williams, perhaps we can talk about this in private. No, Marcus said firmly. We'll talk about this right here. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a message from Kenji Yamamoto. Running 3 mins early, parking now. Marcus looked up. 3 minutes. The elevator dinged again. Not Yamamoto. Not yet. But another figure stepped out. Older, distinguished. Silver hair. A deep green cashmere coat. Harold Whitman, 72 years old, founding member of the Meridian Club and one of its largest private donors. He took in the scene quickly. Jennifer? He asked. What's going on? She hesitated. There's been a misunderstanding. Harold's gaze shifted to Marcus. Do you have a reservation, sir? I do, Marcus replied. Private room number 3, meeting with Kenji Yamamoto. Harold turned to Jennifer. Is that reservation valid? Jennifer nodded reluctantly. Then what's the problem? No one answered. Harold approached Marcus. May I see identification? Marcus handed him the business card. Harold read it slowly, then looked up. Well, he said, this is awkward. Then he turned back to Jennifer and Sarah. I've been a member here for 37 years, he said coldly, and I've never seen a guest, much less an owner, treated with this level of presumptuous arrogance. What were you thinking? Sarah opened her mouth, but Harold raised a hand. Don't. Just don't. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Kenji Yamamoto had arrived. A sleek black car pulled up outside the glass doors. Moments later, the doors opened. Kenji Yamamoto stepped in, tall, poised, 2 assistants behind him. He looked around. He saw the frozen faces, the woman filming, the silent guards, the tension. And then he saw Marcus. He smiled. Marcus, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for the invitation. Marcus shook it warmly. Welcome to the Meridian Club. Yamamoto's eyes scanned the room. I sensed something was unusual when I stepped in. Raised voices, maybe? Is everything all right? Marcus smiled faintly. We'll talk upstairs. As the 2 men walked toward the elevator, the stream behind them still rolled. Amanda whispered into the camera. That man just turned the entire room upside down without raising his voice once. As the elevator doors closed behind Marcus and Yamamoto, Sarah slumped into her chair, face pale. Jennifer stared at the closed elevator, phone still buzzing in her hand. Amanda's live stream count, 2,800 and rising, and outside, half a dozen reporters were already circling the street. The next phase of the fallout hadn't even begun. The elevator doors slid shut with a quiet hiss, sealing off the chaos behind them. Marcus didn't say a word. Neither did Kenji Yamamoto. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the elevator gliding upward and the faint chime of each passing floor. 10 seconds stretched into 30, then a full minute. Finally, Yamamoto turned his head, studying Marcus's expression. "You didn't tell me it would be like that." Marcus kept his eyes forward. "I didn't plan for it to be like that," he said calmly. "But I wasn't surprised." Yamamoto nodded slowly, hands folded in front of him. His eyes were sharp, but his voice was measured.